All right, hello everyone. So, a couple of months ago, I resigned from my job because, as most of you who have been following my story over the past couple of months already are familiar with, I decided that I wanted to go and travel the world. You know, I'm starting with Bali and then I'm planning on heading north. I want to go to several different countries, but that's kind of for a future video. But you see, part of the process of doing this is that you can't sit around in your cushy office job. You've got to resign. You can't just take a leave of absence. So I had to fully resign from the company that I was at and tell them, hey, look, I might be back in a year, who knows? But for now, I'm out of here. But you see, even though I was excited to leave and finally go ahead and do this trip I'd been planning for a year, I wasn't excited about having to give notice, right? I was not excited about having to tell people that I was leaving. Like, don't get me wrong, I was happy to tell my friends that I was leaving and why, and they had a pretty good understanding of why. But I wasn't excited about telling, like, management or people that I didn't know so well, because it all kind of ties back to a video that Keith Woods made several years ago. I think it's the second video on his channel, if you search oldest to newest. I think it's got, like, on work and free time in the title. He was talking about how if you are not part of the mass of workers that gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go work in the call center, or if you're not, dropping off milk, if you're not a truck driver, if you're not part of the kind of working class or middle class toil, these massive workers, then it's almost like you're no longer a citizen. Once upon a time, back in the 1920s and 1930s, there was a concerted effort by the Western democracies to extricate people from the toil of the 40-hour work week. In 1933, FDR passed a 4-day work week bill that would reduce it down to 30 hours. And there was this real sense of optimism that the proletariat could build up such a surplus, kind of the Protestant work ethic, that they could build up such a surplus of wealth that future generations would only have to work 10, 20 hours a week. But that's all been abandoned. That's no longer on the cards. It's a pipe dream. And nowadays, the metaphysical starting point of most politicians is, how can we get more trinkets for the middle class? It's all about increasing home ownership amongst the poor. But you never hear politicians talk about free time. How can we extricate people from manual labor and give them more free time? It's all just about how can we help the middle class make more money? The philosophy that was once there has been completely abandoned. Now, you might be listening to me kind of drone on about this and thinking, well, yeah, that's all fine and well. Wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to work? But what does this actually have to do with anything that we have any control over? And that's what I wanted to actually talk about today. You see, back in 2008, right around the time I was finishing university, I managed to land myself a relatively good job after university. Now, in 2020 hindsight, it was not that great, but I thought that I was set for the next decade, But then the economic crash of 2009 hit, and by July of 2009, I was made redundant. I needed to find a job, any job. So I ended up getting a job at this little rinky-dink call center, working in inbound customer service. Unfortunately, not the first time in my life I would have to do a job like this. But anyway, it wasn't that bad. But you see, here's the thing, right? So I took this customer service job, taking inbound calls and everything, and I met some cool people there. And I worked there. I ended up working there for about a year and a half until the end of 2010. The point is, I'm working in this kind of small call center, maybe 100 people, and we were divided into 5 teams of 5, right? So there's 5 teams in this little call center. Every call center does this. It's much easier to manage staff when you divide teams up like that. But what the managers will often do is they will try to create competition between the teams, right? So, for example, the operations manager or the center manager, whoever it is, right? They will devise a strategy where they'll break the call center up into smaller teams with team leaders, and then those team leaders will compete with one another to see who has the best stats. And I certainly don't begrudge people who come to work every day and they want to do a good job. They want to come to work and they want to meet the metrics and take the appropriate number of calls per hour and give good customer service. I was like that to a certain degree. But you see, here's the thing that baffled me, and this was 2009, the first time I would encounter this, and then I encountered it many more times over the next decade, is I would bump into people that were not team leaders. They were people on these teams. So they were just customer service reps who were in the trenches taking inbound calls. And they would work really, really hard because they wanted to up the team average. They wanted to improve the team average. Now, keep in mind, they're not getting anything of any monetary value out of this. They're not getting any type of major commissions or anything. And if they are part of the team that wins, all they get is like pizza day or KFC day. It's really tedious. The reward is very tedious. But anyway, here's the part that I found the most baffling, right? This was the part that I found to be inextricable, is these people, okay, they were mostly like middle-aged women. They would develop an ego about being on the team that had the best stats, right? That took the most arbitrary number of calls or was rated on average as having the best customer service of the call center. And they would get mad at people on the team that were lowering the team average. Now, if they were the team leader, that would be a little bit different, I don't think we would begrudge the team leader of, becoming fixated on how well people are performing and, wanting to compete with the other team leaders. That's a completely different kettle of fish. But this was a bunch of people on the team who were emotionally invested in being on the winning team. And by winning, I mean putting in the most amount of labor output to make their overlords a few extra cents per hour, right? Because that's all it was. It was just a simple way to divide and conquer, basically. I don't begrudge upper management for doing this. And again, I'm not talking about a little bit of friendly competition. I'm not talking about when me and my friend were teenagers and we worked in the factory folding boxes. That was literally our job when we were like 15. And we would compete to see who could fold the most number of boxes in an hour. But it was always just a bit of friendly competition. It wasn't part of our ego as workers or anything like that. But for these other people, these aforementioned Karen types, it was absolutely part of their ideology, even though the whole idea of the teams competing was just a way by upper management to milk a few extra pennies, to milk a little bit of extra productivity out of the peasants down in the lowly call center. But they took it to heart and would compete with one another. And this is just one example of like the SAB corporate kind of sycophantry that I saw, obsequiousness, I believe is the word, that I used to see. Now, the reason why I bring this up, right, the reason why I'm talking about this is because when it came time to give notice at my previous position, I was aware of this phenomenon, and I knew that a lot of people just wouldn't get it, because if you work in a typical office environment or any type of job, and you tell people, you announce that you're resigning because you got a job doing the same thing at another company or whatever, making more money, everyone will give you a pat on the back. But if you tell them you're leaving to go do your own thing in life, then they don't quite know how to react to it, And it's not just jealousy or anything like that. Like, a lot of people are genuinely kind of baffled by it, because as a society, as a civilization, we have abandoned the concept of free time. And people who have hobbies, This is what Keith was talking about. Just the concept of the hobby is a little bit demeaning in and of itself, you know? When people say, do you have any hobbies? Our free time, the free time that we have as people who work 40 hours a week, our free time has become so commodified that a hobby is almost kind of a shrine to the life that you would live if you weren't trapped working in the call center or in the coal mine or in the truck or, you know, whatever your little beat is, right? And again, I'm not saying that hard work is a bad thing. I'm saying that when you have a job, or not even a job, but when you're doing something that you're passionate about, time, it's almost like time disappears, you know, like sometimes when I'm editing a video, I get so lost that an hour of my time just disappears. I blink and I've spent an hour on the editing because I'm so focused on it. But if you're toiling away at some tedious customer service or sales job or whatever it is, there's a will to make time go faster. It's almost like you try and block out what time it is. You know, you just want the day to be over, but it's repetitive. It's every day. You spend 8 hours wishing that it was the end of the day. And then the little bit of time that you do have in the evening is just spent unwinding from the toil of the day prior. And the days bleed into themselves. And there are people out there that like it that way. There are people out there that enjoy it. And if you're not one of those people, if you're one of those people that would like to just get on a plane and just fly away or just do something else with your life, if you're the type of person who would not be frightened at all by the idea of just having $100,000 a year income and just kind of whittling away your day doing your own things, if you're one of those people that thinks that would be an awesome kind of lifestyle, then you need to actively protect yourself from these other types of people. Like, you actually have to put up a psychological barrier between your goals of extricating yourself from labor and traveling overseas and having a whole bunch of life-affirming experiences, or even staying at home and having a bunch of level 2 happiness experiences. You have to shield yourself from the people that don't understand this, and don't try and get them to relate to you, and don't try and relate to them, because you're just fundamentally different. But even at my last job, where I actually was fairly popular and liked most of the people there, bar a few, I knew that some people just wouldn't get it, and I was mentally prepared for it, having seen these experiences years earlier in my life. And I wanted to jump on here and share these thoughts with you today. Anyway, thanks for listening. Bye-bye.